So the last one that we're going to show is pivoting the waist dart into the center front. You may have a garment design in some cases that look like this, where the waist is going into the center front, or you might have a garment design that looks like this, where the garment design is coming into the center front, where the center front is partially a seam either from the neck or from the waist. This is what our pattern piece will look like when we're done with it, or in this version here. So this is going to be a challenge one. What's the first thing we need to do? Establish our grain line. Always, always, always you want to start with a nice clean grain line. This is 104. We're pivoting the dart into the center front. So we're going to hook our sloper to that center front line. First thing, as the designer, you need to identify where do you want this new dart to go. So let's, in this first example, do the upper torso of the garment. This is considered anything above the bust point. It's considered the upper torso. Anything below is the lower torso. So we're going to put this here for now. Remember the rule. The rule is always where we're going to draft from new to old. So in this case, this particular garment will be like this one, where it is joined here along the center front, but we will end up having to do a seam at the neckline. So when we pivot this, it's going to swing out. So we're only going to draft from new to our first dart leg. So there's going to be a lot that's not traced at this point. We drop our pencil into our apex. We pivot the dart closed. Now we finish drawing from new to old. So I'm going to transfer this here, the new dart mark, neckline, shoulder line, armhole with the armhole notch, side seam, waist. Making sure I've marked my dart mark very, very carefully. These are my new dart opening spaces here. Make sure everything is trued. So, waist, corners, before you go any further, you want to make sure everything is nice, perpendicular, and true. Now we need to find the dart center. To create our new dart center, we're going to look at the perfectly balanced between these two. We are going to connect that in the draft to the new apex, the true dart apex. Rule number 1 about darts. Back off, shorten the dart. So on our full scale, we're backing off 5/8 of an inch. On your half scale, we're backing off 1/4 plus 1/16. This becomes your new dart. Now we need to connect this to the dart legs. Now we need to true our dart. So, again, I'm going to just trim here to make it more manageable. We fold on that new dart center. Crease. Now, again, on a neck dart, we want the seam allowance to go down to the center front. All the gravity needs to come down here, the weight never up into the garment. So I'm going to fold on that first dart leg. And I want to close the dart. to make sure my style line is trued. This is pretty good. You will want to double check to make sure your center front style line still aligns. You're going to blend that back in there. Notice that it needs to be trued quite significantly. Actually, you don't want to just eyeball it. And notice this dart excess. I want to trace off using my tracing wheel to know which direction my seam allowance is going. And I can see here, this is what the dart intake would look like if I did not trim it out with seam allowance. Then I will clean it up and add my seam allowance. Remember to add the punch line, which is going to be 1/2 inch. This is your dart punch. And the grain line. So obviously this part of the body is off grain. We want to make sure we're maintaining the grain on the lower half of our body. Center front on fold. The grain is always going to be parallel, so if this were to become separate pieces, it's always going to follow the true grain. Center front, now that we've split it, this portion would take 1/2 inch because it's a seam. Anytime that side seam, center front seam, shoulder seam always gets 1/2 inch. So 1/2 inch, 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, 1/2 inch, 1/2 inch. We're doing this as a hem, so 1 inch. This part here is on the fold, so you would literally cut it on the fold or as a single pattern piece. I'm just going to show you what the seam allowance looks like on the dart. 1/2 inch. And this is on the fold here, so this is going to extend up. Half inch, which is what on your half scale body? 1/4 inch, right? Everything on the half scale is literally cut in half. So don't forget, after you add your seam allowance everywhere, you're going to come back and notch. I want to notch my dart leg. I want to notch. This is going to be, when you unfold it, there would be a notch there. Notch your center front. So this is our front bodice with center front dart. Cut 1 on fold. Size 8.